Welcome to One Book, One Coffee. I'm thrilled you've chosen to delve into Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 today. By doing so, you're setting yourself apart from a world often engrossed in the rapid scroll of social media and the endless binge of streaming. You've chosen instead to immerse yourself in meaningful literature, a choice that speaks volumes about your curiosity and desire to grow. Fahrenheit 451 isn't just a book. It's a profound statement on society, technology, and the power of knowledge. This extraordinary work has inspired thinkers across generations, and even the likes of Barack Obama have cited its significant impact. Bradbury, a master storyteller, was driven by his passion for literature and a profound concern for the direction of human culture. His own experiences during the rise of television and his love for libraries deeply influenced this cautionary tale. Now, a quick note before we dive in. This is a detailed chapter-by-chapter walkthrough, so it's going to be a longer session. Take your time with it. There's no rush. If you need to step away, save this video to your watch later or forward the link to yourself on WhatsApp so you can pick up right where you left off. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's walk through this book together, chapter by chapter, idea by idea. Let's begin. In a world where books are banned, one man's journey to find meaning challenges everything. Ray Bradbury, born in 1920, was an imaginative soul who grew up during the Great Depression. His love for reading and libraries was profound, serving as a sanctuary during his youth. Bradbury's experiences during the rise of mass media and his deep concerns for the future of human thought led him to write Fahrenheit 451, a powerful critique of censorship and conformity. Picture this. You're settling into your favorite chair with a steaming cup of coffee, and I'm about to tell you about one of the most unsettling yet brilliant opening chapters in all of literature. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 begins with a section called The Hearth and the Salamander, and from the very first line, we're thrust into a world that feels both alien and eerily familiar. The story opens with Guy Montag, our protagonist, and he's absolutely loving his job. But here's the twist that'll make your coffee go cold. Guy Montag is a fireman, except he doesn't put out fires. He starts them. Specifically, he burns books. Bradbury opens with that haunting line. It was a pleasure to burn. Think about that for a moment. We're immediately confronted with someone who finds joy in destruction, in the elimination of knowledge itself. Now you might be thinking, how did we get to a world where firemen burn books instead of saving lives? Bradbury doesn't give us a lengthy history lesson. Instead, he drops us right into Montag's reality. This is a society where books are illegal, where owning them is a crime punishable by having your house burned down around you. Firemen like Montag don't fight fires anymore because everything is fireproof. Their sole purpose is to hunt down books and incinerate them, along with the homes that harbor them. What's fascinating about Montag is that he's not some cruel monster delighting in others' suffering. He's a regular guy who genuinely believes he's doing good work. He sees himself as a protector of society, keeping people safe from the dangerous ideas that books might contain. Isn't that chilling? Here's someone who's been so thoroughly conditioned by his society that he finds genuine pleasure in destroying the very vessels of human thought and creativity. But then something happens that changes everything. On his way home from work one evening, Montag encounters a 17-year-old girl named Clarisse McClellan. Now think about this. When was the last time a chance encounter with a stranger completely shifted your perspective on life? Clarisse is different. She's curious about the world around her. She notices things, the dew on the morning grass, the pattern of leaves, the phases of the moon. She asks Montag a simple question that rocks him to his core. Are you happy? This question hits Montag like a lightning bolt. Here's a man who's never questioned his contentment, who's simply gone through the motions of his life without examining whether he's actually fulfilled. Clarisse's innocent curiosity awakens something in him that's been dormant. She tells him about how people used to sit on porches and talk, how they used to have conversations that lasted for hours. She describes a world where people actually paid attention to each other instead of being constantly distracted by entertainment and noise. When Montag returns home that night, he finds his wife Mildred unconscious on their bed, having overdosed on sleeping pills. The response: a pair of technicians arrive with a machine that pumps her stomach and replaces her blood, treating the whole incident like a routine plumbing job. They mention casually that they handle several such cases every night. Can you imagine living in a world where attempted suicide is so common it's become mundane? Where human despair is just another technical problem to be efficiently solved. This scene reveals the profound emptiness at the heart of Montag's society. People are so disconnected from genuine human experience, so numbed by constant entertainment and instant gratification, that many are literally dying inside. Mildred spends her days absorbed in her parlor walls, essentially giant television screens that surround her with mindless programming. She refers to the characters in these shows as her family, more invested in fictional relationships than in her actual marriage to Montag. The title of this section, The Hearth and the Salamander, is rich with symbolism that Bradbury weaves throughout. The hearth traditionally represents home, warmth, and family gathering, but in this world, the hearth has become a place of isolation where people stare at screens instead of connecting with each other. The salamander, meanwhile, is a creature that was once believed to live in fire without being consumed. It's the symbol on Montag's uniform, representing his supposed immunity to the destructive force he wields. But as we'll see, Montag is far from immune to the changes that are about to engulf his life. What makes this opening so powerful is how Bradbury shows us the seductive nature of this dystopia. This isn't a world where people are obviously oppressed or living in fear. On the surface, everyone seems happy. They have entertainment, they have comfort, they don't have to wrestle with difficult ideas or challenging questions. Books, after all, can be troublesome things. They might make you think, make you question, make you uncomfortable with the status quo. Think about our own relationship with information and entertainment today. How often do we choose the easy distraction over the challenging read? How many of us have felt overwhelmed by the constant stream of information and secretly wished for simpler times? Bradbury's genius lies in showing us how a society might willingly surrender its intellectual freedom in exchange for comfort and ease. As this opening section unfolds, we watch Montag begin to crack. The encounter with Clarisse, the near death of his wife, the growing awareness of the emptiness around him, it all starts to add up. He begins to notice things he's never seen before, to question assumptions he's never challenged. He's like someone waking up from a long dream, and the awakening is both exhilarating and terrifying. This sets the stage for everything that follows, as Montag embarks on a journey that will transform him from a destroyer of books into someone who risks everything to preserve them. But that transformation begins here, in these quiet moments of recognition, when a simple question about happiness opens the door to a much larger examination of what it means to truly live rather than merely exist. As we move forward in our journey through this remarkable novel, we'll see how these seeds of doubt grow into something revolutionary, something that challenges not just Montag's world, but our own understanding of knowledge, freedom, and the price of intellectual complacency. Picture this scene with me for a moment. You're walking home from work on a quiet evening, your mind on autopilot, when suddenly a stranger appears beside you and asks the simplest yet most profound question imaginable. Are you happy? This is exactly what happens to Guy Montag when he encounters 17-year-old Clarisse McClellan on that fateful autumn night, and it's a moment that will unravel everything he thought he knew about his life. Clarisse isn't like anyone Montag has ever met before. While everyone else in his world moves through life at breakneck speed, consumed by their wall-sized television screens and constant noise, she walks slowly, notices things, and most dangerously of all, she thinks. When Bradbury introduces us to this remarkable young woman, he's giving us something precious, a mirror held up to our own frantic, distracted lives. Now, think about this for a moment. When was the last time someone asked you if you were truly happy? Not just content, not just getting by, but genuinely happy. Clarisse poses this question to Montag with the kind of innocent directness that only comes from someone who hasn't yet learned to accept the world's compromises. She tells him about her strange habits, how she likes to walk in the rain and feel it on her face, how she stays up late talking with her family, how she notices the dew on the grass in the early morning. To Montag, who lives in a world where such simple pleasures have been forgotten, she might as well be describing magic. What makes this conversation so pivotal isn't just what Clarisse says, but how she sees. She observes that drivers don't know what grass is anymore because they're always speeding past it at 95 miles per hour. She notices that people don't talk to each other, they just exchange information. She points out that nobody has time anymore to simply sit and think. Sound familiar? Bradbury was writing this in the 1950s, but he might as well have been describing our world of constant notifications, endless scrolling, and the perpetual rush to the next thing. Clarisse becomes Montag's guide into a different way of being, much like Virgil leading Dante through the circles of understanding. She shows him that there's an alternative to the mechanical, unthinking existence that everyone around him accepts as normal. When she mentions that her psychiatrist wants to know why she goes for walks instead of watching television, or why she sometimes just sits and watches the sunrise, we see how thoroughly her society has pathologized curiosity and wonder. It's chilling how closely this mirrors our own world's tendency to medicate away anything that doesn't fit neatly into productivity culture. But here's where Bradbury's genius really shines through. Clarisse doesn't lecture Montag about what's wrong with their world. Instead, she simply lives differently, and her very existence becomes a question mark hanging over everything he's accepted as normal. She's like that friend we all know who somehow manages to find joy in the smallest things while the rest of us are stressed about our endless to-do lists. You know the type. They notice the way light falls through leaves. They remember the names of shopkeepers. They ask follow-up questions about how you're really doing. The conversation reveals something profound about the nature of happiness and fulfillment. Montag has been going through the motions of his life, burning books by day and consuming mindless entertainment by night, never stopping to ask whether this routine actually brings him joy. Clarisse's question forces him to examine his life with fresh eyes, and what he sees disturbs him. He realizes he can't remember the last time he laughed genuinely, the last time he felt wonder, the last time he connected meaningfully with another person. This mirrors something we see constantly in our own lives. How many of us have gotten so caught up in the hamster wheel of modern existence that we've forgotten to ask ourselves the fundamental questions? We optimize our schedules, we chase the next promotion, we consume endless streams of content, but do we stop to wonder if we're actually happy? Clarisse represents that voice within us that whispers these uncomfortable questions, the voice we often try to drown out with busyness and noise. What's particularly striking about their encounter is how Clarisse's authenticity highlights the artificiality of everything else in Montag's world. She laughs because something genuinely amuses her, not because a laugh track tells her to. She's curious about things because they actually interest her, not because she's supposed to be interested. She forms her own opinions rather than accepting whatever she's told. In a world of manufactured experiences and prescribed emotions, she's refreshingly real. The meeting also plants the seeds of doubt that will eventually bloom into full rebellion. Clarisse mentions that firemen used to put out fires instead of starting them, a piece of historical knowledge that contradicts everything Montag has been taught. This tiny crack in his certainty will eventually become a chasm. It's like when you first learn that something you've always believed isn't quite true, and suddenly, you start questioning everything else you've accepted without examination. As their conversation draws to a close and Clarisse disappears into the night like some kind of modern-day Socratic spirit, she leaves Montag with that haunting question echoing in his mind. the damage is done, or perhaps we should say the healing has begun. Because sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is disturb our comfortable assumptions and wake us up to possibilities we'd forgotten existed. This encounter sets the stage for everything that follows in Montag's journey. Clarisse has lit a small flame of doubt and wonder in his mind, and in a world where such flames are forbidden, we know it's only a matter of time before it either gets snuffed out or grows into something that changes everything. The question that will carry us forward is whether Montag has the courage to tend this flame, or whether he'll try to extinguish it himself to maintain the safety of his unexamined life. Picture yourself settling into your favorite chair with that perfect cup of coffee, steam curling upward like the questions that begin to spiral through Guy Montag's mind. We're diving deep into one of literature's most compelling internal struggles, where a man whose entire identity revolves around destruction suddenly finds himself questioning everything he's ever believed. This is where Fahrenheit 451 transforms from a simple story about book burning into something far more profound, a mirror reflecting our own capacity for awakening. Montag's transformation doesn't happen overnight, much like how we don't suddenly wake up one morning and realize we've been living someone else's life. It's more like that slow moment when you're driving the same route to work you've taken for years, and suddenly you notice a beautiful old building that's apparently been there all along. How many times had you passed it without seeing? Montag is experiencing that same unsettling recognition, except instead of a building, he's seeing the emptiness of his own existence. Think about this for a moment. Here's a man who has spent years, perhaps decades, walking into people's homes and burning their most precious possessions. Books weren't just paper and ink to their owners. They were repositories of dreams, knowledge, comfort, and connection. Yet Montag performed this destruction with the mechanical precision of someone who had never questioned the why behind the what. Isn't this eerily familiar? How often do we go through our daily routines, following protocols and procedures, without stopping to ask ourselves why we're doing them or what impact they're having? The catalyst for Montag's awakening comes through his encounters with Clarisse, that wonderfully curious 17-year-old who asks him the most dangerous question of all. Are you happy? Now, you might think this is a simple question, but consider how rarely we actually pause to examine our own happiness. We're so busy pursuing what we think should make us happy, the promotion, the bigger house, the latest gadget, that we forget to check in with ourselves about whether we actually are happy. Clarisse forces Montag to confront this fundamental question, and his inability to answer it immediately reveals the hollow core of his existence. What makes Montag's internal conflict so compelling is how relatable it feels, even though most of us aren't professional book burners. Think about the last time you questioned a deeply held belief or a career path you'd been following. Remember that uncomfortable feeling, like the ground shifting beneath your feet. That's exactly what Montag experiences, but amplified because his entire society is built on the suppression of the very thing that might provide answers: knowledge, literature, and independent thought. The genius of Bradbury's portrayal lies in how he shows us that Montag's crisis isn't just personal, it's existential. This isn't simply a man having a midlife crisis or questioning his career choice. This is someone beginning to understand that he's been complicit in the systematic dumbing down of humanity. Imagine discovering that your job, which you believed was protecting society, was actually destroying its soul. The weight of that realization would be crushing, wouldn't it? Modern parallels to Montag's situation are everywhere if we look closely enough. Consider how many of us work in industries or systems that we later come to question. The pharmaceutical executive who realizes their company is prioritizing profits over patient welfare. The social media engineer who discovers their algorithms are designed to exploit human psychology for engagement rather than genuine connection. The financial advisor who understands that they're selling products that benefit the company more than their clients. These individuals face their own versions of Montag's dilemma, the terrifying recognition that they've been part of something harmful. What's particularly fascinating about Montag's internal struggle is how it mirrors the process of awakening that many of us experience in our digital age. We're surrounded by information, yet somehow feel less informed. We're more connected than ever, yet increasingly isolated. We have access to more entertainment options than any generation in history, yet rates of depression and anxiety continue to climb. Montag lives in a world where people are constantly stimulated by wall-sized televisions and immersive entertainment, yet they're profoundly empty inside. Sound familiar? The beauty of Montag's character development is that Bradbury doesn't make him a sudden convert to rebellion. Instead, he shows us the messy, uncomfortable process of questioning everything you've taken for granted. Montag doesn't immediately throw down his flamethrower and declare his opposition to the system. He's confused, conflicted, and scared. He tries to rationalize his feelings, to find ways to continue in his role while somehow reconciling his growing doubts. This internal wrestling feels authentic because it reflects how most of us actually change, not through dramatic revelations, but through a gradual accumulation of doubts and questions that eventually reach a tipping point. Consider how Montag's relationship with his wife Mildred serves as another mirror for his internal conflict. She represents everything his society values: constant entertainment consumption, emotional numbness, and complete acceptance of the status quo. As Montag begins to question their world, he sees his wife with new eyes, recognizing the profound disconnection between them. Have you ever had the experience of growing or changing in ways that suddenly made you see your relationships differently? It's both enlightening and heartbreaking, much like Montag's realization that he and Mildred are strangers living in the same house. The brilliance of this section lies in how Bradbury uses Montag's crisis to explore larger questions about conformity, purpose, and the courage required to think independently. Montag's internal conflict becomes a roadmap for anyone who has ever felt the stirring of dissatisfaction with their life's direction, anyone who has wondered whether they're living authentically or simply going through the motions. As we move forward in Montag's journey, keep in mind that his questioning phase is perhaps the most crucial part of his transformation. It's messy and uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. Sometimes the most important journey we can take is the one that leads us to question everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our world. So grab another sip of that coffee, and let's continue exploring how one man's awakening becomes a powerful metaphor for the courage it takes to think for ourselves in any era. Picture yourself settling into your favorite chair with that perfect cup of coffee, steam rising gently as we dive into one of the most chilling symbols Ray Bradbury ever created. We've been exploring the world of Fahrenheit 451 together, and now we need to talk about something that will make your skin crawl just a little bit more than usual. Let me introduce you to the Mechanical Hound, a creation so unsettling that it perfectly captures everything terrifying about a society that's lost its way. Now think about this for a moment. What makes a good guard dog? Loyalty, right? The ability to distinguish between friend and foe to protect what matters. But what happens when you take away the heart, the soul, the capacity for mercy, and replace it with cold, calculated programming? That's exactly what Bradbury gives us with the Mechanical Hound, and it's absolutely brilliant in its horror. The Mechanical Hound isn't just a robot. It's an 8-legged nightmare that lives at the firehouse, supposedly there to help track down book owners and other criminals. But here's where it gets really interesting. This thing has been programmed to react to chemical compositions, to the very scent of a person. It's like having a bloodhound that never gets tired, never shows mercy, and never questions its orders. Imagine a spider the size of a small car, made of metal and malice, with a needle full of procaine or morphine ready to paralyze or kill whoever it's been set after. Sweet dreams, right? But here's what makes this symbol so powerful and why it should make us all a little uncomfortable in our modern world. Montag begins to suspect that someone has been tampering with the hound's programming. It growls at him, shows what can only be described as hostility. Now, you might be thinking, well, it's just a machine, how can it be hostile? But that's exactly the point. When we create systems of control that operate without human judgment, without the capacity for mercy or second thoughts, we create monsters that can turn on anyone, even their supposed masters. Think about our world for a moment. We live in an age of algorithms, don't we? Systems that decide who gets loans, who gets flagged at airports, who sees what content on social media. These digital hounds are tracking us every day, making decisions about our lives based on data patterns and programming we don't fully understand. The Mechanical Hound is Bradbury's way of asking us, what happens when we give up human judgment to machines? What happens when efficiency becomes more important than wisdom? The genius of this symbol lies in how it reflects Montag's growing paranoia and awareness. As he begins to question the society around him, as he starts to wake up from his sleepwalk through life, the hound becomes a physical manifestation of his fear. It's like when you first realize you're being watched by security cameras everywhere you go. Once you notice them, you can't stop seeing them, can't stop feeling that electronic gaze following you around. But let's dig deeper into what the hound really represents. It's not just state surveillance, though that's certainly part of it. The Mechanical Hound embodies the complete absence of human connection and empathy in this society. A real dog might hesitate before attacking someone it knows, might show confusion or reluctance. The Mechanical Hound has no such qualms. It's been stripped of everything that makes relationships possible, everything that makes community and understanding achievable. This reminds me of something that happened to a friend of mine recently. She was trying to dispute a charge on her credit card, but every time she called, she got routed through an automated system that couldn't understand her specific situation. The system kept giving her the same unhelpful responses, no matter how she explained her problem. She felt like she was talking to a wall, a very polite wall that kept saying it wanted to help while doing absolutely nothing useful. That's the Mechanical Hound in miniature, a system designed to serve but ultimately incapable of truly understanding human needs. The hound also represents how technology can be perverted from its original purpose. Dogs were humanity's first partners, our companions in hunting, protection, and friendship. The Mechanical Hound takes this ancient relationship and corrupts it completely. Instead of a loyal friend, we get a relentless enemy. Instead of protection, we get persecution. It's like taking the concept of artificial intelligence, which could be used to solve hunger or disease, and using it instead to create more sophisticated weapons. What's particularly unsettling about Montag's relationship with the hound is how it mirrors his relationship with his entire society. Just as he's not sure if the hound has been programmed to dislike him, he's not sure who in his world he can trust. His wife Mildred seems more connected to her television family than to him. His fellow firemen go through their routines with mechanical precision, much like the hound itself. The machine becomes a perfect symbol for a society that's lost its humanity. Now, think about this in terms of our own fears about technology and control. We worry about facial recognition systems, about data mining, about artificial intelligence making decisions that affect our lives. The Mechanical Hound is all of these fears rolled into one terrifying package. It's what happens when surveillance becomes weaponized, when efficiency becomes more important than justice, when we create systems so complex that we lose control of them. As we continue through Montag's journey, the hound will become even more significant. It represents not just the external forces trying to control him, but his own internal struggle with a society he's beginning to see clearly for the first time. Every growl from that metal beast is a reminder that there's no going back to ignorance, no return to the comfortable sleep of conformity. So as we move forward in our exploration of this remarkable novel, keep the image of that Mechanical Hound in your mind. Let it remind you to question the systems of control in your own life, to ask who's programming the algorithms that shape your world, and to never forget the irreplaceable value of human judgment, mercy, and connection. After all, in a world of mechanical hounds, being human becomes the most radical act of all. Picture this. You're settling into your favorite chair with that perfect cup of coffee, steam curling up like morning mist, and we're about to dive into one of the most heartbreaking yet transformative moments in Ray Bradbury's masterpiece. We've watched Guy Montag's world slowly crack open through his encounters with 17-year-old Clarisse McClellan, that curious girl who dared to ask if he was happy. But now, something happens that will shatter his complacency completely and send him hurtling toward a point of no return. Clarisse simply vanishes. One day she's there, walking in the rain, catching it on her tongue like liquid starlight, asking impossible questions that make Montag's mind spin. The next day she's gone. No dramatic goodbye, no explanation, just an empty space where wonder used to live. When Montag finally works up the courage to ask his wife Mildred about it, she mentions it casually, almost as an afterthought, the way you might mention running out of milk. Oh, that girl, dead, hit by a car. Her family moved away, past the sleeping pills. Now think about this for a moment. How many times in our own lives have we encountered someone who opened our eyes to new possibilities, only to have them disappear from our world? Maybe it was a teacher who made you question everything you thought you knew, a friend who showed you a different way of seeing, or even a stranger whose random act of kindness made you reconsider your assumptions about humanity. These people are like shooting stars, brilliant and brief, leaving us forever changed in their wake. Clarisse's disappearance becomes the catalyst that transforms Montag from a sleepwalker into someone desperately, urgently awake. It's as if he'd been living in a house with all the curtains drawn, and she had opened one window to let in sunlight. Now that the window has been boarded up again, he can't unsee the darkness he's been living in. The absence of her light makes his world feel impossibly dim. But here's where Bradbury's genius really shines through. Clarisse's physical disappearance doesn't diminish her impact, it amplifies it. She becomes more powerful as a memory, as a haunting reminder of what's possible when someone chooses to truly live instead of merely exist. Think about how this mirrors our own digital age, where meaningful connections can vanish with the deletion of an account, the blocking of a number, or simply the algorithm deciding you no longer need to see someone's thoughts. Yet sometimes those brief encounters, those fleeting moments of genuine human connection, resonate far longer than relationships that span decades. Montag finds himself walking the same route where he used to encounter Clarisse, like a pilgrim visiting a shrine. He's looking for traces of her presence, desperate to recapture that feeling of being truly seen and understood. It's the same impulse that drives us to revisit old text messages from someone who mattered, to drive past places where important conversations happened, to search for echoes of transformative moments in our past. The cruel irony is that in Montag's society, Clarisse's disappearance is treated as completely normal, even inevitable. She was different, therefore dangerous, therefore disposable. Her uncle mentions that the government doesn't like people who walk, who ask questions, who notice the dew on the grass in the morning. She was a glitch in their perfect system of controlled ignorance, and glitches get eliminated. This should send chills down our spine, as we consider how often our own society marginalizes voices that challenge the status quo, how quickly we move to silence those who ask uncomfortable questions about the way things are. What makes this even more poignant is that Montag realizes he never really knew Clarisse beyond their brief encounters. She was a catalyst, not a destination. He didn't fall in love with her as a person so much as with the possibility she represented, the reminder that life could be rich and strange and beautiful if only he had the courage to really look at it. Now, with her gone, he's left holding that possibility alone, and it feels both precious and terrifying. This is where Bradbury taps into something profoundly human about loss and motivation. Sometimes we need to lose something beautiful to understand its true value. Clarisse's absence creates a vacuum in Montag's world that can only be filled by action, by choosing to become the kind of person who asks her questions, who notices what she noticed, who refuses to accept the shallow sleep of his society. Her disappearance also forces Montag to confront the reality of what happens to people who think differently in his world. It's no longer abstract. The girl who made him laugh, who showed him how to catch rain and notice the moon, is gone, probably dead, certainly silenced. This personal loss transforms his growing unease into something sharper and more urgent. It's one thing to feel vaguely troubled by the state of the world. It's another to lose someone you care about to the machinery of that world. In our own time, we might think about how the disappearance of certain voices from our media landscape, our social networks, our communities, can serve as wake-up calls. When someone who challenged us, inspired us, or simply made us think disappears from our sphere of influence, we're left with a choice. Do we shrug and move on, or do we take up the torch they carried? Montag chooses the torch. Clarisse's disappearance doesn't end her influence on his story. It begins it in earnest. She becomes his North Star, the memory that guides him toward rebellion, toward books, toward the dangerous territory of independent thought. In losing her, he finds the courage to become the person her questions suggested he could be. And this brings us to a crossroads in our story, where grief transforms into action, where the death of wonder becomes the birth of revolution. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing someone can do is show us what we're missing, then leave us to find it for ourselves. Welcome back, coffee lovers and book enthusiasts. I hope you've got that perfect cup brewing because we're about to dive into one of the most pivotal moments in Fahrenheit 451, a scene that will make you question everything you think you know about Guy Montag, and perhaps even yourself. Picture this. You've been living your entire adult life believing you're doing the right thing, following the rules, being a model citizen. Then suddenly, you discover something hidden in your own home that completely shatters that carefully constructed reality. That's exactly what happens to Montag when he uncovers his secret collection of books, and trust me, this revelation is like watching someone realize they've been sleepwalking through their entire existence. Now, think about this for a moment. How many of us have hidden parts of ourselves that we're afraid to acknowledge? Maybe it's a creative passion we've suppressed because it doesn't fit our practical life, or perhaps it's doubts about beliefs we've never dared to question out loud. Montag's hidden books represent something far more profound than simple rule-breaking. They're physical manifestations of his unconscious rebellion against a system designed to keep people from thinking too deeply. When Bradbury reveals this secret collection, he's not just showing us books tucked away behind an air conditioning vent. He's unveiling the human soul's desperate need to preserve meaning in a meaningless world. Each book Montag has secretly saved represents a moment when his authentic self broke through the conditioning of his society. It's like discovering you've been unconsciously collecting pieces of your true identity, while your conscious mind was busy playing the role everyone expected. The beauty of this scene lies in how it mirrors our modern relationship with information and authentic thought. Today, we might not have firemen burning books, but we certainly have algorithms deciding what we see, social media echo chambers reinforcing our existing beliefs, and the constant noise of digital distraction keeping us from deep contemplation. How many of us have felt that same unconscious pull toward something real, something meaningful, even when our surface lives seem perfectly acceptable? Consider how Montag must feel in this moment of discovery. It's like finding out you've been living a double life without even knowing it. One part of him has been the dutiful fireman, burning books and maintaining order, while another part has been carefully, secretly, preserving the very things he's supposed to destroy. This internal contradiction isn't just character development. It's a mirror reflecting the contradictions we all carry within ourselves. The hidden collection also represents hope in the darkest of circumstances. In a world where books are forbidden, where thinking is discouraged, where conformity is enforced through entertainment and distraction, These secretly preserved volumes become seeds of possibility. They're proof that the human spirit's hunger for knowledge and beauty can't be completely extinguished, no matter how oppressive the system becomes. Think about the courage it takes, even unconsciously, to preserve what everyone around you says is dangerous or wrong. In our current world, this might translate to the person who quietly questions popular narratives, the individual who seeks out diverse perspectives despite social pressure to conform, or the person who maintains their curiosity in an age of quick answers and surface-level thinking. What's particularly striking about Montag's discovery is how it reveals the power of gradual awakening. He didn't suddenly decide to rebel against his society. Instead, his authentic self had been quietly collecting evidence of a different way of being, preparing for the moment when his conscious mind would be ready to acknowledge what his heart already knew. It's like how we sometimes find ourselves drawn to certain ideas, books, or conversations long before we fully understand why they matter to us. The Secret Collection also highlights the difference between passive consumption and active preservation. In Montag's world, people consume endless streams of entertainment through their wall-sized televisions and seashell radios, but consumption isn't preservation. It doesn't require choice, intention, or risk. Montag's hidden books, however, represent deliberate acts of preservation, each one a small rebellion against the forces of forgetting. This distinction feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it? We live in an age of infinite content, where we can stream anything instantly, where information flows past us like a digital river. But how much of what we consume do we actually preserve? How much do we choose to keep, to protect, to return to when we need wisdom or beauty or truth? Montag's collection reminds us that there's a profound difference between having access to everything and actually possessing something meaningful. The emotional weight of this discovery cannot be understated. Imagine the fear, the excitement, the confusion Montag must experience. These books represent both salvation and damnation in his world. They're evidence of his humanity, but they're also proof of his criminal activity. They offer the possibility of genuine understanding, but they also guarantee that his old life is over forever. This moment also serves as a powerful metaphor for the awakening process itself. Often, when we begin to question the assumptions that have guided our lives, we discover that we've been unconsciously collecting evidence of alternative ways of being for years. Maybe it's books that spoke to us, conversations that lingered in our minds, or experiences that didn't quite fit the narrative we'd been told about how life should work. Montag's hidden collection becomes a bridge between his old self and his emerging new self. These books aren't just objects, they're invitations to become someone different, someone more authentic, someone willing to think for himself regardless of the consequences. They represent the accumulated weight of all those moments when he felt something was wrong with his world, even when he couldn't articulate what that something was. As we transition into the next phase of Montag's journey, remember that his discovery of these hidden books isn't just about finding contraband. It's about finding himself, about recognizing that the person he thought he was and the person he actually is might be two very different people. And perhaps that's a discovery we all need to make in our own lives. So grab that coffee, settle in, and prepare for what comes next, because Montag's world is about to change forever. Welcome back to One Book, One Coffee. I hope you've got your favorite mug in hand because we're diving into one of the most heart-wrenching and pivotal moments in Fahrenheit 451. Picture this. You're settling in for what you think is just another evening, maybe scrolling through your phone, when suddenly your entire world comes crashing down. That's exactly what happens to Guy Montag when the fire alarm rings and he discovers that tonight's target isn't just any house, it's his own. Now think about this for a moment. We've watched Montag's slow awakening throughout the story, haven't we? He's been questioning everything, collecting books like forbidden treasures, and wrestling with the growing realization that his society has lost something essential. But there's a difference between intellectual awakening and the moment when reality forces your hand. It's like the difference between reading about swimming and being thrown into the deep end of a pool. Montag is about to get very, very wet. The scene unfolds with that familiar mechanical precision we've come to associate with this dystopian world. The fire truck arrives at 11 North Elm Street, and Montag recognizes the address with a sinking heart. It's his home, his sanctuary, the place where he's been secretly harboring books and nurturing his growing consciousness. Captain Beatty, ever the puppet master, has orchestrated this moment with cruel theatrical flair. He knows exactly what he's doing, and there's almost a sadistic pleasure in the way he reveals that Mildred, Montag's own wife, has turned him in. Here's where Bradbury shows us something profound about human nature and the price of awakening. Mildred's betrayal isn't born from malice, exactly. She's genuinely terrified. She's been living in a world where books are the ultimate taboo, where thinking independently is dangerous, and suddenly her husband has dragged this forbidden knowledge into their home. Think about how we react when someone close to us starts challenging beliefs we've never questioned. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? It forces us to examine our own assumptions, and not everyone is ready for that kind of psychological upheaval. Mildred represents something we see all too clearly in our own world, the person who would rather maintain comfortable ignorance than face difficult truths. She's like someone who refuses to acknowledge climate change because it's too overwhelming, or who won't engage with news about social injustice because it disrupts their peaceful bubble. Her betrayal of Montag isn't just personal. It's the betrayal of someone who chooses willful blindness over the painful process of growth. But here's where the story takes its most devastating turn. Beatty doesn't just want to burn Montag's books, he wants Montag to do it himself. This is psychological warfare at its most refined. It's not enough to destroy the contraband. The system demands that Montag participate in his own spiritual destruction. Beatty hands him the flamethrower with that knowing smile, understanding exactly what he's asking. Now imagine being in Montag's position. Everything you've come to value, everything that has awakened your mind and soul, is about to be destroyed, and you're being forced to be the instrument of that destruction. It's like being asked to burn your own journals, delete your own creative work, or destroy the very things that have made you who you are. The psychological torment is almost unbearable. As Montag stands there with the flamethrower, we witness one of literature's most powerful moments of internal conflict. He's watching his books burn, these vessels of human knowledge and imagination that have opened his eyes to what his world has lost. Each page that curls and blackens represents not just information but possibility. The poetry that taught him about beauty, the philosophy that challenged his assumptions, the stories that showed him different ways of being human, all of it reduced to ash. This scene resonates so powerfully because it mirrors our own struggles with censorship and intellectual freedom. Think about the book challenges happening in schools and libraries right now, where people are demanding the removal of texts that make them uncomfortable. Consider how social media algorithms create echo chambers that effectively burn away opposing viewpoints, or reflect on how authoritarian regimes throughout history have targeted books, libraries, and educated people first. Bradbury understood that controlling information is controlling minds, and Montag's forced participation in this destruction represents every time we've been complicit in our own intellectual oppression. But here's the beautiful thing about human nature. There comes a moment when the soul simply refuses to be broken. As Montag watches his world burn, something inside him snaps. The man who has been questioning and doubting and slowly awakening suddenly becomes crystal clear about what he must do. When Beatty continues his psychological torture, mocking Montag's newfound consciousness and threatening Faber, Montag reaches his breaking point. The moment when Montag turns the flamethrower on Beatty is shocking, but it's also inevitable. It's the moment when someone who has been pushed beyond endurance finally pushes back. It's every whistleblower who chooses truth over comfort, every activist who stands up despite the personal cost, every person who says enough to a system that demands their complicity in their own oppression. This turning point transforms Montag from a passive questioner into an active rebel. He's no longer just someone who reads books in secret. He's someone willing to pay the ultimate price for intellectual freedom. The fire that was meant to destroy him instead forges him into something stronger, more purposeful, more fully human. As we watch Montag flee into the night, leaving behind everything he's known, we're witnessing a birth as much as a destruction. Sometimes growth requires burning away everything that no longer serves us, even when that burning is painful beyond words. Montag's house may be in ashes, but his spirit has never been more alive. And that's where we'll pause for now, with our protagonist transformed by fire and facing an uncertain but authentic future. Next time, we'll follow Montag as he discovers what lies beyond the flames. Picture this. You're sitting across from me with your favorite coffee, and I'm about to tell you about one of the most heart-pounding escape sequences in all of literature. We've been following Guy Montag's journey from obedient fireman to dangerous fugitive, and now we're at that crucial moment where everything changes forever. Grab your cup a little tighter, because Montag's about to make a run for his life that will transform him completely. When Montag flees toward the river, he's not just running from the Mechanical Hound or the pursuing helicopters. He's literally running from everything he's ever been. Think about the last time you made a decision that completely changed your life's direction. Maybe it was quitting a job that was slowly killing your soul, or walking away from a relationship that had become toxic. That moment when you realize there's no going back. That's exactly where Montag finds himself, as he stumbles through the darkness toward the sound of flowing water. Bradbury paints this escape with such visceral detail that you can almost feel the branches tearing at Montag's clothes, smell the damp earth beneath his feet, hear his ragged breathing as he pushes through the wilderness. But here's what's brilliant about this scene. The physical journey mirrors his psychological transformation. Every step away from the city is a step away from his old identity. The man who once burned books is literally shedding his skin, becoming something entirely new. Now, think about this for a moment. How often do we find ourselves trapped in lives that don't really fit us anymore? We wake up one day and realize we've been sleepwalking through our existence, going through the motions of being who we think we're supposed to be rather than who we actually are. Montag's desperate flight to the river represents that universal human experience of breaking free from societal expectations and discovering our authentic selves. The river itself becomes this powerful symbol of rebirth and renewal. Throughout history and across cultures, water has represented transformation, from baptismal ceremonies to the ancient Greek myth of crossing the river Styx. When Montag finally reaches the water, it's like he's crossing from one world into another. The current literally washes away his old scent, confusing the Mechanical Hound, but symbolically it's washing away years of conditioning and conformity. I love how Bradbury describes Montag's time in the water. It's almost like a meditation. After all the chaos and noise of the city, the mechanical sounds of the pursuit, suddenly there's this moment of profound peace. The water holds him, supports him, carries him downstream toward an uncertain but hopeful future. It reminds me of those moments in our own lives when we finally stop fighting against the current and learn to trust the flow of change. But here's where the story gets really interesting. When Montag emerges from the river, he's not just geographically in a different place, he's psychologically transformed. The clothes he finds hanging on the line aren't just a disguise, they're the costume of his new identity. He's no longer Guy Montag the fireman. He's becoming Guy Montag the seeker, the questioner, the guardian of forbidden knowledge. This transformation reminds me of something we see all the time in our modern world. Think about whistleblowers who risk everything to expose corporate corruption, or activists who leave comfortable lives to fight for causes they believe in. They all go through their own version of Montag's river crossing, that point where personal comfort becomes less important than personal integrity. The pursuit scene also serves as this chilling commentary on how technology can be used to hunt down and eliminate dissent. The Mechanical Hound, with its ability to track scent and its lethal injection, represents the ultimate surveillance state. Sound familiar? In our age of facial recognition software, location tracking, and digital footprints, Montag's paranoid flight feels uncomfortably contemporary. We might not have mechanical hounds, but we certainly have algorithms that can track our every move and predict our behavior with unsettling accuracy. What strikes me most about this section is how Montag's escape represents hope in the face of overwhelming oppression. Here's a man with virtually no survival skills, being hunted by the most advanced technology his society can deploy, and yet he finds a way to slip through their fingers. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and our capacity to adapt when our backs are against the wall. The sensory details Bradbury uses during the escape are absolutely masterful. You can feel the cool night air on your skin, hear the distant sounds of the city fading behind Montag, smell the rich earth and vegetation of the wilderness. It's like Montag is rediscovering his senses after years of numbness. In our own lives, how often do we rush through our days without really seeing, hearing, or feeling what's around us? Montag's flight forces him into this heightened state of awareness that many of us have lost in our comfortable, climate-controlled, screen-dominated existences. The psychological aspect of his escape is equally compelling. As Montag moves away from the city, he's also moving away from the collective delusion that has kept society functioning. He's choosing uncertainty over false certainty, danger over comfortable lies. That takes incredible courage, and it's a choice that resonates deeply in our current moment when we're constantly bombarded with information and misinformation, when it's often easier to accept simple explanations rather than grapple with complex truths. As Montag disappears into the darkness beyond the river, he's not just escaping his pursuers, he's stepping into a larger story about resistance, redemption, and the power of human connection. The river has carried him from one chapter of his life to another, and what awaits him on the other side will challenge everything he thinks he knows about community, purpose, and hope. So as we follow Montag into this new phase of his journey, we're really exploring our own capacity for transformation, our own willingness to leave behind what's familiar for what's true, and our own courage to keep moving forward even when the path ahead is shrouded in darkness. So here we are, settling into what might be the most hopeful and haunting part of Montag's journey. You know that feeling when you've been lost in a dark forest, and suddenly you glimpse a campfire through the trees. That's exactly where we find ourselves as Montag stumbles upon the most extraordinary group of people you could imagine. Picture this: a man fleeing everything he's ever known, his hands still bearing the memory of flames, his mind reeling from the weight of what he's discovered about his world. Montag has crossed that invisible line from citizen to exile, and now he's about to encounter something that will fundamentally change how we think about knowledge, memory, and what it means to be human. The exiles Montag meets aren't your typical rebels hiding in the woods. These aren't people plotting violent overthrow or stockpiling weapons. Instead, they've chosen perhaps the most radical form of resistance imaginable in their book-burning world. They've become the books themselves. Think about this for a moment. In a society that has systematically destroyed written knowledge, these individuals have transformed their minds into living libraries. When Montag first encounters Granger and his companions, he's meeting people who have made an almost sacred commitment. Each person has memorized entire books, word for word, becoming a human vessel for literature that would otherwise be lost forever. Granger himself carries the book of Ecclesiastes, while others hold within their minds the complete works of authors like Thoreau, Marcus Aurelius, and countless others. It's as if they've become walking, breathing repositories of human wisdom. Now, think about this in our modern context. We live in an age where information seems infinite, where we can access virtually any book, any piece of knowledge, with a few taps on our phones. Yet how much of that knowledge do we truly retain? How much becomes part of us? These exiles have chosen depth over breadth, permanence over convenience. They've recognized that there's something profound about internalizing knowledge so completely that it becomes inseparable from who you are. The beauty of what these people have done goes beyond mere preservation. When you memorize something completely, it changes you. The words don't just sit in your head like files on a computer. They become part of your thought process, your way of seeing the world. Granger explains this beautifully when he talks about how the books they carry aren't just stored in their minds but are actively living through them, influencing their decisions, their perspectives, their very beings. Consider how this mirrors something we see in traditional cultures around the world. Before widespread literacy, entire civilizations preserved their wisdom through oral tradition. Griots in West Africa carried the complete histories of their people, passing down complex genealogies, moral teachings, and cultural knowledge through generations. Indigenous communities worldwide maintained vast libraries of ecological knowledge, spiritual wisdom, and practical skills entirely through memory and storytelling. What Bradbury's Exiles are doing isn't really new. It's ancient wisdom applied to a modern crisis. But here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just human storage devices. Granger talks about the plan to rebuild society, to eventually share these books with the world again when humanity is ready. They're not hoarding knowledge, they're protecting it until it can flourish again. It's like they're seeds in winter, waiting for the right conditions to grow. The group operates on a principle that feels almost monastic. They've given up conventional lives to serve something greater than themselves, yet they're not bitter or defeated. There's a quiet confidence in their mission, a deep understanding that what they're doing matters not just for today, but for generations yet to come. They've chosen to become guardians of human consciousness itself. What strikes me most about these characters is how they've found a way to resist without violence, to rebel through preservation rather than destruction. In our current world, where we often see resistance taking the form of protests, boycotts, or political action, these exiles offer a different model. They resist by remembering, by refusing to let essential human knowledge disappear into the void. Granger shares a story about his grandfather that perfectly captures their philosophy. He talks about how his grandfather wasn't important in the conventional sense, but he was someone who built things, who left the world a little better than he found it. This becomes a metaphor for what they're all trying to do. They may not be changing the world dramatically or immediately, but they're ensuring that the tools for positive change, the accumulated wisdom of humanity, will still exist when the world is ready to use them again. The practical wisdom here is profound. In our age of information overload, these exiles remind us that true knowledge isn't about having access to everything, but about deeply understanding something worthwhile. They've chosen quality over quantity, depth over surface-level awareness. They understand that real learning changes you, becomes part of you in a way that casual consumption of information never can. Think about the books that have truly shaped your life. Not the ones you've skimmed or the articles you've scrolled through, but the works that actually changed how you see the world. Those are the books living inside you, influencing your thoughts and decisions long after you've closed their covers. In a way, we're all carrying books within us, whether we realize it or not. As Montag joins this community of living libraries, he's not just finding refuge from his burning world. He's discovering a new way of being human. He's learning that preservation can be a form of revolution, that memory can be an act of defiance, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to let important things be forgotten. This sets us up perfectly for understanding how individual transformation can become the foundation for societal renewal, and how the simple act of remembering can become the first step toward rebuilding a better world. You know how sometimes in life, you're so focused on your own little world that you completely miss the bigger catastrophe brewing around you. That's exactly where we find ourselves in this devastating climax of Fahrenheit 451. Picture this. While Montag is stumbling through the wilderness with his ragtag group of book-memorizing outcasts, the city he's fled from is about to become nothing more than a memory and a crater. Bradbury doesn't just drop this bomb on us metaphorically. He literally drops bombs on his fictional city, and the timing couldn't be more perfect from a storytelling perspective. Think about it. Just as Montag has finally found his tribe, just as he's discovered that books and knowledge can survive even when the physical objects are destroyed, the entire corrupt system that drove him to this point gets wiped clean. It's like watching a phoenix moment, but instead of one bird rising from ashes, we're seeing the possibility of an entire civilization getting a do-over. The bombing scene itself is absolutely haunting. Bradbury describes it with this almost clinical detachment that makes it even more chilling. The planes appear like silver insects in the sky, and then, flash. The city becomes a sun for just a moment before collapsing into darkness. Now, think about this timing. Bradbury wrote this in the early 1950s, just a few years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when the reality of nuclear warfare was fresh and terrifying in everyone's minds. He wasn't just imagining some distant future apocalypse. He was processing the very real possibility that human beings had created weapons capable of erasing entire cities in seconds. What's fascinating is how Montag witnesses this destruction. He's far enough away to survive, close enough to see it happen, but emotionally, he's in this strange space where he should feel devastated, yet instead feels oddly liberated. It's like watching your childhood home burn down. There's grief, yes, but also a weird sense of freedom from all the toxic memories trapped inside those walls. The city represented everything that was suffocating him. The mindless entertainment, the book burning, the shallow relationships, the constant surveillance. In a twisted way, the bombing is almost a relief. But here's where Bradbury gets really clever with his symbolism. The book people, Granger and his companions, they don't celebrate this destruction. They don't say good riddance to the city that persecuted them. Instead, they immediately start talking about rebuilding. Granger tells that incredible story about his grandfather, how his grandfather said he was important not because of what he was, but because of what he did. He planted trees, he built things, he helped people, he left the world a little better than he found it. This is Bradbury's vision of hope, not revenge against the ignorant masses, but patient, persistent reconstruction. Think about our own world for a moment. How many times have you felt like our society is so broken, so divided, so addicted to quick fixes and shallow thinking, that maybe we need to just start over? Social media echo chambers, political polarization, the decline of nuanced thinking. Sometimes it feels like we're living in our own version of Montag City. But Bradbury's message here isn't about waiting for some external force to wipe the slate clean. It's about being ready to rebuild when the opportunity comes. The book people have essentially become living libraries. Each person has memorized entire works. One person is Plato's Republic, another is Marcus Aurelius, someone else carries Thoreau in their head. It's this beautiful image of human resilience and the power of community. When physical books can be burned, when libraries can be destroyed, when governments can ban and censor, the human mind remains the ultimate sanctuary for ideas. These people have literally become the books they've saved. Now, here's something that hits differently in our digital age. We have access to more information than any generation in human history, yet we often feel less informed, less thoughtful, less connected to wisdom than ever before. The book people in Fahrenheit 451 had to memorize entire works because they had no other choice. We can access virtually any book ever written with a few taps on our phones, but how many of us have actually internalized that knowledge? How many of us could recite even a single, meaningful passage from memory? The bombing forces a reckoning with what really matters. All the fancy technology, all the wall-sized TV screens, all the mechanical hounds and fire trucks, none of it can protect against the ultimate consequence of a society that's lost its way. But the ideas, the stories, the accumulated wisdom of humanity that survives in the minds of people who valued it enough to preserve it. As the book people prepare to walk back toward the smoking ruins of the city, they're not carrying weapons or plans for revenge. They're carrying hope, patience, and most importantly, memory. They understand that rebuilding a civilization isn't about constructing new buildings or installing new technology. It's about nurturing the kind of thinking that creates a society worth living in. This connects so powerfully to our current moment. We're constantly hearing about various crises, climate change, political upheaval, social fragmentation, that make people wonder if we're heading toward our own kind of collapse. But Bradbury's vision suggests that the real question isn't whether difficult times will come, but whether we'll be ready to rebuild wisely when they do. Are we cultivating the kind of deep thinking, the kind of human connection, the kind of wisdom that could help us create something better from whatever ashes we might face? The bombing of the city isn't really the end of Fahrenheit 451. It's the beginning of the real story, the story of how a few people who refuse to give up on human knowledge and wisdom become the seeds of whatever comes next. And that story, my friend, is still being written in our own lives every day. Well, friend, we've been through quite a journey together with Guy Montag, haven't we? We've watched him transform from a dutiful book-burning fireman into a fugitive fleeing through the darkness. And now, as we settle into this final part of our conversation, we arrive at perhaps the most beautiful and hopeful moment in all of Fahrenheit 451. Picture yourself sitting by a campfire on a cold night, surrounded by strangers who somehow feel like family, and you'll begin to understand the profound sense of belonging and purpose that Montag discovers in these closing pages. When Montag stumbles into the camp of the book people along the railroad tracks, he's not just finding refuge from the Mechanical Hound that's been hunting him. He's discovering something far more precious than safety. He's finding his tribe, his purpose, his reason for existing in a world that seemed determined to strip away everything meaningful. Now, think about this for a moment. Have you ever felt like you were the only person who cared about something everyone else seemed to dismiss? That's exactly where Montag has been, and suddenly he realizes he's not alone at all. The leader of this ragtag group, a man named Granger, explains their mission in terms that are both simple and revolutionary. Each person in their community has memorized an entire book, becoming a living library. They are, quite literally, human books. One man is the Gospel according to Mark, another is Plato's Republic, and someone else carries the entirety of Walden in his mind. It's like a beautiful, breathing library where knowledge lives not on shelves but in hearts and minds. Can you imagine the responsibility and the honor of being entrusted with preserving an entire work of human wisdom? What strikes me as particularly powerful about this concept is how it transforms the very nature of what it means to be human. In Montag's society, people have been reduced to passive consumers, mindlessly absorbing entertainment and refusing to think deeply about anything. But these book people have chosen to become active vessels of knowledge, walking repositories of human thought and creativity. They've literally embodied the books they love, making themselves indispensable to the future of civilization. Granger shares a story with Montag about his grandfather, and it's one of those moments that just stops you in your tracks. He talks about how his grandfather wasn't particularly important by society's standards, but he left something behind. He carved wood. He was kind to people. He made a difference in small, daily ways. The grandfather used to say he was part of the things he touched, and those things were part of him. When you think about it, isn't this exactly what we're missing in our digital age? We're so focused on going viral, on making a massive impact, that we forget the profound importance of the small, human touches that actually matter. Now here's where Bradbury's vision becomes almost prophetic. Granger explains that they're waiting for the world to need them again. They know that someday, when people grow tired of the emptiness and superficiality of their current existence, there will be a hunger for real knowledge, real books, real thinking. They're like seeds waiting for the right season to sprout. And isn't that exactly what we see happening today? Despite having access to more information than ever before, people are increasingly hungry for depth, for authentic connection, for books that challenge and transform rather than merely entertain. The metaphor Granger uses about the phoenix is absolutely brilliant and worth dwelling on. He talks about how the phoenix burns itself up every few hundred years, but the difference between humanity and the phoenix is that we know we're doing it. We have the knowledge to break the cycle, but we keep making the same mistakes anyway. Think about this in terms of our current moment. We know that social media can be addictive and harmful. We know that constant entertainment is numbing our capacity for deep thought. We know that burning books, whether literally or figuratively, is dangerous. Yet we keep walking toward the same flames. But here's the hope that Bradbury offers through these book people. They represent the possibility of breaking that cycle. They've chosen to carry the antidote to forgetfulness. They've become living proof that knowledge can survive even the most determined attempts to destroy it. When I think about modern parallels, I'm reminded of teachers working in underfunded schools, librarians fighting against book bans, or even just parents reading bedtime stories to their children. These are all acts of preserving and transmitting knowledge, all ways of keeping the flame of learning alive. The ending of the novel, where the city is destroyed in Montag, and the book people begin the journey back toward civilization, isn't really an ending at all, it's a beginning. They're not just carrying books in their memories, they're carrying the seeds of a new world, one built on the foundation of human knowledge and wisdom rather than ignorance and entertainment. The image of them walking along the river, each person a living library, is one of the most hopeful visions in all of literature. What makes this vision so powerful is its recognition that real change doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic revolutions. It comes from individuals who decide to carry something precious forward, who choose to remember when everyone else chooses to forget, who insist on thinking when thinking becomes dangerous. These book people aren't trying to force knowledge on an unwilling world. They're simply preserving it until the world is ready to receive it again. As we close our conversation about Fahrenheit 451, I want you to consider this question. What book, what piece of wisdom, what essential knowledge would you choose to carry forward if it all depended on you? Because in many ways, it does depend on us. Every time we choose a challenging book over mindless entertainment, every time we engage in real conversation instead of surface-level chatter, every time we pause to think deeply about something important, we're joining the ranks of Bradbury's book people. We're becoming part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And that, my friend, is a beautiful and hopeful way to live in any age. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is a compelling narrative that explores the dangers of censorship, the value of intellectual freedom, and the transformative power of books. Through the journey of Montag, a fireman who begins to question the book-burning society he lives in, the story highlights the critical importance of questioning the status quo and the role of literature in preserving culture and individual thought. As Montag transitions from a compliant enforcer to a rebellious seeker of truth, readers are urged to reflect on their own lives and the societal structures surrounding them. Key takeaways from this narrative include: 1. Question everything. Challenge the norms and seek out your own answers. Start incredibly small by questioning one assumption a day and exploring alternative viewpoints. 2. Value knowledge. Understand the importance of books and education in expanding your worldview. Commit to reading just a few pages of a book each day that challenges your perspective. 3. Pursue authenticity. Be true to your beliefs and values, even when they oppose societal pressures. Begin by identifying one core value and align your daily actions with it. 4. Embrace change. Be open to transformation and growth, even when it feels uncomfortable. Take one small step toward change each week and be patient with yourself as you adapt. These takeaways encourage introspection and proactive engagement with the world, reminding us that small, consistent actions can lead to significant personal and societal change. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with at least one idea from this book that stuck with you, one concept you're going to carry forward. It could be something that challenged your thinking, something you want to try, or even something you disagreed with. Your insight might be exactly what another listener needs to hear today. And if this summary gave you something valuable, a new perspective, a spark of motivation, or even just a peaceful hour with your coffee, share it with someone who might need it too. Subscribe to One Book, One Coffee, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new summary. Every week, we sit down together with one great book, one warm cup of coffee, and the simple belief that wisdom, shared well, can change lives. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, every small step counts. See you at the next book.